What's up, anglers, and welcome back to the first episode since the conclusion of March Madness and the college basketball season. But we got less than a day off as the college basketball transfer portal opened up Tuesday for the men's and Monday for the women's. So the news is still going, and we have a full episode here on this week's edition of the Ames Angle. First order of business we have on this week's episode is we have to congratulate some winners of the Iowa State Daily Sports Desk Bracket Competition and Tournament Challenge, if you will. This year's winner was Dom Tornabane. Give it up for Dom. Followed by Lucas Vollmer and Ian Morey. Congratulations to them. Snaps. But another form of business, all the editors at the Iowa State Daily also go into a bracket pool, and Aleigha and I finished 1 and 2. Very fitting, very proud of that. But yeah, that wraps it up for March Madness. But the portal opened up, so we have to talk about that before we welcome our guest of the week. The portal opened up on Tuesday, and at the moment, Iowa State currently has 2 players in the portal. It is Cade Kelderman and Dominic Nelson. Cade Kelderman will be a rising senior looking to finish his college basketball career elsewhere. I'm probably looking for a downgrade, maybe to a mid-major to get some playing time. Now, the more confusing option that we have is Dominic Nelson. Dominic Nelson entered his name into the portal on Tuesday morning, and what the question that everyone's asking is, isn't Dom Nelson out of eligibility? And the answer is yes. He played 2 seasons of junior college, 1 season at Utah Valley and 1 season at Iowa State. He enters the portal hoping to be granted an extra season of eligibility from the NCAA, but that is pending request, and we will see what happens.
On the other side of the basketball facility, a similar story is painted for the women's team, where we saw 9 of the 12 players enter the transfer portal, most notably Audie Crooks. As the portal opened, we've only seen 1 Cyclone enter and find a new home, and that's Elisa Williams, who is taking her talents to Indiana. As we see more players, we will add that to the trackers on our website.
Yeah, you can follow all of the transfer portal information. It's changing rapidly. All of the articles, like Aleigha said, are updated regularly with updates that Aleigha and I receive on their respective trackers for men's and women's basketball. So you can definitely stay up to date with the Iowa State Daily on the NCAA transfer portal as we move through this very chaotic 15 days of the college basketball season.
This week our guest is sports reporter Marshall Woods, who's here to talk about the best games of the men's March Madness tournament.
Hello, anglers. So, the March Madness men's tournament has concluded. Another great year of men's college basketball. And I wanted to run down the top 5 games of the tournament, not by upseeds, but by the quality of the game. And to start, I have a couple honorable mentions. Unlike the actual list itself, this is not in an order of best to worst, but it is from the round of 16 to the national championship. So, for the round of 64, I have number 12 High Point taking down number 5 Wisconsin 83-82. This was, I think, one of the biggest upsets of the tournament. But a lot of people had High Point taking down Wisconsin. They've been a tournament team that lots of people have rooted for to upset teams throughout years past, specifically last year. But they came through this year. They won the round of 64 game. My other round of 64 game is VCU taking down number 6 UNC in the round of 64. And then I have number 9 TCU 66-64 over Ohio State for the opening game of the tournament. For the round of 32, I have number 11 Texas taking down Gonzaga. Texas was a very interesting team this year as an 11 seed. They went pretty far into the tournament, losing to Purdue in the Sweet 16, which is another game I have on this list. I have number 9 Iowa taking down number 4 Nebraska 77-71 in the Sweet 16. Those teams hate each other, so that was a very, very entertaining game, and it was fun to watch. And then I have UConn beating Michigan State in the Sweet 16, 67-63. And then finally, for my honorable mentions, I have the national championship game, number 1 Michigan beating number 2 UConn 69-63 in Indianapolis. Very good game. We've seen crazier games before, but just in terms of basketball, is a good game of basketball. So, starting off my list, I have number 5 to start. Number 9 Iowa beating number 1 Florida 73-72 in the second round of the tournament. Florida was the very first seed to be taken down to an Iowa team that throughout the regular season seemed to struggle a decent bit. Iowa State played them earlier on this year, and they put up a good fight. Iowa State did win that game, but it was a good ending. Alvaro Folgueras hit a 22-foot walk-off three to win the game for Iowa. Isaiah Browns missed a free throw that allowed Iowa to hit that three without having to go to overtime. Iowa won this game even with Ben Sturtz, their star player, shooting 5 for 17 and 0 for 9 from the three-point line. He really seemed to struggle this game, but he did score double digits, 13, 5, and 5. Tavion Banks overall led scoring. Florida lost 2 of their last 3 games of the year, and their only win came to number 16 seed Prairie View. So they really struggled to end their season. Last year's, or 2025's national champion was not able to even get close to repeating. So number 4, I have number 5 St. John's beating number 4 Kansas 67-65. Another very, very good game in the second round of the tournament. Darren Peterson makes 2 free throws to tie with 13 seconds left, 65-65. Kansas then fouls 4 times over 10 seconds, one of the most interesting strategies I've seen to end a game in a while. They were so far under the bonus that they could foul, but it did not matter. Dylan Darling drives down the lane with 3 seconds left, scores to win the game for St. John's, puts them on through. That was Darling's very first points of the game, so just really weird ending. We've seen some weird endings throughout the tournament, but I think that might be up there for one of the weirdest, just because the Bill Self's foul calls, deciding to foul St. John's that many times, and then St. John's just goes out and wins it anyway. Darren Peterson leads scoring with 21 points. St. John's goes on to lose 80-75 in their very next game. So it didn't seem to matter too much, but, a win is a win, and just moving on that far was big for a program like St. John's. Number 3, I have number 2 UConn beating number 1 Duke in the Elite 8, 73-72. This one was very close to being second because the ending of this game was insane. Duke led by 19 with 5 minutes left in the first half, and then UConn fought back to be down by just 2 with a couple seconds remaining. Caden Boozer turns the ball over in the backcourt to Silas DeMary Jr. Braylon Mullins then gets the ball, hits a 35-foot bomb to win the game with timeout. Duke was the most picked champion in the tournament. They were on 23.1% of ESPN's brackets to win the tournament, as well as 4 of the 11 Iowa State daily brackets. So Duke going down in this fashion was a big surprise. Miss out on a Final Four in one of their best seasons in recent years. Just a really interesting ending. UConn go on to go to the national championship after beating Illinois and lose to the number 1 seeded Wolverines. Number 2, I have number 4 Nebraska beating number 5 Vanderbilt in the second round, 74-72. This game wasn't insane, but if you just like watching basketball, this was an incredible game. Super back and forth. Only 4 lead changes throughout the game, but consistently trading blows with one another. Super, super fun game to watch. Environment was crazy in Oklahoma City. Nebraska is one of the best and biggest fan bases in all of college sports. So anytime Nebraska would have anything happen, the crowd pops would be absolutely crazy. Nebraska was down 2 with 40 seconds remaining, and then Rink Mask hits a very close shot right under the bucket to tie at 72. Braden Frager makes a layup with 1.7 seconds left. Tyler Tanner puts up a 49-foot full-court shot. The ball rims in and out, goes more than halfway down the bucket. Crazy ending, very reminiscent of Gordon Hayward having the ball go in and out. Vanderbilt lose on a heartbreak. Nebraska will go on to play their arch rivals Iowa in the Sweet 16, as I mentioned earlier. Third hero game matchup of the year, and they go on to lose 71-77. And my number 1 and best game of March Madness this year, this shouldn't be a surprise at all. Number 7 Kentucky beating number 10 Santa Clara 89-84 in the first round. What a game. The game does go on into overtime. The overtime period isn't anything crazy, but the regulation is so back and forth. 27 lead changes throughout the 40 minutes. One of the best finishes to regulation of a basketball game I've personally ever seen. Aleigha makes a layup with 10 seconds left to tie at 70 apiece. Allen Graves for Santa Clara goes down the court, hits a 25-foot three-pointer with 2.2 seconds remaining to take the lead. Game surely seems over. Owe goes up the court, gets the ball, just throws up a heave, praying, and drills it. That shot saves Kentucky as they go on to dominate overtime. 89-84. Kentucky goes on to play Iowa State in the next round. They lose by 19. Owe finishes with 35, 8, and 7, one of the best March Madness first-round performances I've seen. Just a crazy game. Obviously, Kentucky didn't go on to do anything too crazy in the tournament, but just having an ending like that was so ridiculous that I was on my feet watching it in my dorm room. Good tournament this year. We've seen crazier games and we've seen crazier upsets, but I think overall, if you just enjoy watching basketball, the 2026 March Madness tournament was one to remember.
A big conversation comes out of your number one ranked game, the Santa Clara Kentucky game. Something almost happened in that game that is pretty important. Santa Clara had the opportunity to pull off a Cinderella story and change the narrative. What do you think is the fate of Cinderella teams, and do you think they are reaching their end?
I think if anything, we're just going to start seeing mid-majors and low-tier non-power conference programs come into the tournament with higher seeds. St. Louis was a mid-major, and they whooped Georgia, and Georgia was the favored team, but as these teams get better players and become better, they're going to be ranked higher and have more respect from the committee. VCU, that was a big upset, but they were an 11 seed, so people weren't too surprised. Same with High Point beating Wisconsin. So I think that these good mid-major teams are just going to be doing better throughout the regular season, and they're not going to be coming into the tournament at a 13 seed or a 14 seed like a lot of the big Cinderella story upsets we've seen over the past couple of years.
Another thing coming out of the March Madness tournament was the performance of Miami, Ohio. What are your thoughts about that team?
I think Miami was a example recently of a team that didn't get the respect of a mid-major, but I think a lot of it came down to the fact that power conference teams were not confident enough to put Miami of Ohio on their schedule. Although they did have some struggles throughout the conference season, even though they won every single game during the regular season, they had some close wins. But I think it's proof they were a good enough team because they beat SMU, which was another team that had to go into the first four, by 10. And obviously they lost by a lot to the Volunteers, Tennessee in the first round. But Tennessee turned out to be a very good team this tournament. They beat Iowa State, they beat Virginia. So I think Tennessee performed better than a lot of teams were expecting and made Miami's postseason chances look a lot worse than they really were. I think if they played any of the other 6 seeds, they would have put up much more of a fight than they did.
Now it's time for Threads of the Week. What do you got, Marshall?
I have my 2025-26 Anthony Edwards Timberwolves City jersey. I love Prince. I love the Wolves. I love Anthony Edwards. This is, I think, the best Timberwolves jersey of all time. Maybe controversial. Trees are up there. But for me, this is like an obvious buy. I love Prince so much, and I love the Timberwolves. So, a collaboration between them just makes this an absolute beauty of a jersey.
One last question for you, Marshall. What's your favorite Prince song?
It's got to be Purple Rain or Let's Go Crazy.
Thank you for your time. Now time for the Ames Angle, the coaching tree underneath TJ Otzelberger.
When TJ Otzelberger came to Ames 5 seasons ago, he brought with him a great coaching staff made up of coaches from across the country that were the leading factor in the recent success in straight NCAA tournaments made, Sweet 16s, the list goes on for head coach TJ Otzelberger. And with that success comes the departure of those great quality assistants. And we've seen that now where 2 Iowa State assistant coaches have now left Iowa State for head coaching jobs. J.R. Blount headed to the University of San Diego, and more recently, Kyle Greed headed just up the road north to go back to the University of Northern Iowa.
As Kyle Green returns to UNI, this will be his 4th stint with the team and his 17th season as a coach of the program. And similar to Kyle is his son, AJ Green, who is on the Milwaukee Bucks. So shout out to the Bucks. With all these departures from the Iowa State men's basketball team, how big of an impact do you think this is for college basketball as a whole?
I compare it a lot to Nick Saban's coaching tree at Alabama. Think about how many guys that you see now either coaching in the NFL or coaching in college football that were former assistants of the great Nick Saban. I think that's something that is going to be reproduced here by TJ Otzelberger, and it means you're doing something right. It means that Iowa State is winning, and they are. They just finished number 8 in the AP poll, and in multiple way too early predictions, you see the Cyclones in the top 10 or the top 15 when they're losing their 3 biggest players probably, and they're for sure losing Jefferson and Lipsey, and Momcilovic is probably going to the NBA draft. So the trust and the respect that all these critics, voting members of polls have for TJ Otzelberger is insanely high. And when assistant coaches leave like this, you might think, oh, all these players are going to transfer out to follow them for more playing time. Iowa State is only losing 2 players at the moment, and I can only really see a third joining with Kelderman entering the portal, Dom Nelson chasing another year of eligibility. And the only other name that I can really kind of see that would make an impact is freshman Xavier Mitchell, who missed most of the year either due to a red shirt or this questionable injury that was kind of never really brought up to the media. So I think Iowa State is here, and these assistant coaches leaving is great for them and great for TJ Otzelberger's reputation and expectations around college basketball. But I don't really think it's going to hurt the Cyclones more than it benefits them. But all the details can be found in my article titled How Assistant Departures May Benefit Otzelberger and Cyclones. You can find that on the Iowa State Daily website.
Like, comment, subscribe for more at the Iowa State Daily.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode highlighting the men's and women's basketball transfer portals along with the beginning of spring football leading up to that spring showcase, and to our guest Marshall Woods, who brought us the best games of March Madness and threads of the week. That's all for this episode, and we'll see you next time.